All right, let's do this. Ubisoft. They just finished their press conference here at E3 2018, and you are joined by me, Cameron McCulloch-Keeble, one-third of the hosts of Games Up Podcast, the show that you are listening to right now. Lewis is still in Copenhagen. We're going to have reactions from him for a couple of the later conferences, and we'll be sharing his reactions later on today for Xbox that happened yesterday, and tomorrow even for the conferences that happened today, Squeenix and Ubisoft, who have just finished. Let's get into it though. How we do this show is we work through every conference chronologically, so we'll go from the very first announcement to the very last announcement in order, breaking down everything in either massive detail if it was a big announcement, or a little detail if it was a tiny announcement. So, Ubisoft, we started off with a giant fucking dancing panda, because why the hell wouldn't you? It was for Just Dance 2019, and it was exactly what you expect from a Just Dance reveal. It was very lively, it was very colourful, it was really quite campy. We didn't actually see any of the game, which I find to be interesting, although Just Dance has had a weird release for the last couple of years where it was on mobile for a few years, and I think it probably still is. I don't know even if it gets a main console release these days, so showing the gameplay off would probably have been quite difficult. We saw a live marching band, supposedly, although I'm not sure how live they really were. They looked like they were playing, certainly, but the audio sounded incredibly good if they were live. And they were flanked, as I say, by a dancing panda and somebody wearing what looked like an alien, a big pink alien for a face mask. It was a bit of an odd way to start the show, I must say, but Ubisoft are known for their odd conferences. The one thing I will say is we started off the show by seeing an absence of Aisha Tyler, which I found really sad. Aisha is a really wonderful presence every year, and though lots of people mock and make jokes, and we've been bad for that as well, and made a few jokes here and there about, the time she talked about lady boners for 10 minutes, or the time she awkwardly made friends with a dude in the crowd. But Aisha Tyler is a really lovely personality and a really talented woman who's a big fan of the gaming industry, and it was a shame not to see her here. Though we did see in her place a number of the developers that are working on these games from the teams that are making them, and I suppose that's a pretty fair mix. If we're going to lose a big personality, switching it for the little personality, well, little isn't a nice way to put it, but the personalities behind these games, that's a lovely way to do it. So from Just Dance, we moved in to Beyond Good and Evil, and holy shit, Ubisoft killed the trailer game this year. Absolutely killed it. In terms of what we actually saw from the game, not a huge amount, but my god, that trailer. Firstly, it looks incredible, and it's realised scenes and sci-fi aesthetics that I just didn't think we'd see from games, like that I wouldn't have predicted to see from this game. It looked not only beautiful but imaginative and futuristic, and had a really set in stone art direction. I don't think we see this game for quite a while, but my god am I excited to. The trailer showed off the antagonist of the game, who is Jade, who's the protagonist of the first game, so that's very interesting. I still find it interesting that this is called Beyond Good and Evil 2, but it's a prequel. That seems like a naming weird thing. But it's because so many people wanted Beyond Good and Evil 2, so I understand it. Then they talked. Then we showed a little bit of gameplay, and it was clearly a vertical slice. Like, it was very clearly this is what we are targeting the game to look like. We saw some very floaty, but not floaty in like a bad doesn't land way, but floaty in a fast movement, fluid world kind of gameplay of some combat that was shown in the city from the demo from the trailer that we saw last year. Oh god, it looks so good. It looks so cool. And then we got Joseph Gordon-Levitt coming on the stage to talk about how they want to use fans to create parts of the game. So Joseph Gordon-Levitt is responsible for a company called Hit Record, which is a collaborative website for artists to join together and work on projects. And Hit Record is making stuff for Beyond Good and Evil 2. So it seems like they're going to be building a small community with goals for various stages of development. They put some goals up in the middle of the conference, and I think basically the way it's going to work is like they'll say, hey, we need a song that sounds something like if this was happening and this was happening. And a bunch of people will get together and come up with an idea. They didn't mention this in the conference, but it's super important to know. When this first happened, I thought, well, that's kind of chintzy, though, getting your fans to do the work. But they're not. the people who work on JGL's Hit Record site actually get paid. So this is awesome. Like, when we first heard about this, I thought this is a great way to involve the community, but I don't like the idea that people are giving their time to this game for free, especially with the amount of work that's, expected from it, and the amount of hype behind it. But actually, this is Ubisoft putting a huge amount of power in the control of their community. This is Ubisoft putting a huge amount of trust and openness in the control of their community, and potentially paying you to make one of the games that's been people's dream for a year. I cannot explain how happy and excited I am that we got these reveals today. Super, super great work from Ubisoft there. So that all happened. And then they announced a thing called BGE Fest, Beyond Good and Evil Fest, I assume, which I don't really get what it is. They explained it was like a fan fest event, but I really can't see them putting on a whole fan event for one game. Like that, they wouldn't even do that for Assassin's Creed, and AC sells crazy copies year on year, so I don't know. They're either expecting this game to do fucking numbers, or they're really putting a lot of effort into making this game their next big thing. I imagine you see this as a next-gen launch title, and that's why there's so much push to it. But yeah, that little announcement left me feeling a bit odd, a bit unsure what that actually was. But the rest of it, man, Beyond Good and Evil looks so goddamn cool. Then we moved on to Rainbow Six Siege. Rainbow Six, they announced that it's now got 35 million players. They didn't explain whether that's 35 million active players, which it probably isn't, because that would have meant they sell a whole lot more. So it basically probably means they've got 35 million accounts on the game, or 35 million active people, not active, but 35 million people with saves who have played the game, for example. I'd like to know whether that includes like free trials and demos and stuff, because like I've played Rainbow Six Siege for all of an hour. Am I one of those 35 million people? And if so, what are those numbers realistically? Or is this like consistently people who play the game, or on average, something like that? You know what I mean? Or is it just copies sold, I guess? Anyway, that was Rainbow Six Siege. Then they announced a big esports push. They announced that they are doing their own kind of pro league alongside some of the stuff they already do. I know people are going to hear me say this and shake their heads a bit, but I do kind of feel like this was inspired a little bit by the Overwatch League. The Overwatch League has done huge bits on Twitch. It's been one of the most popular esports leagues in a long while. And I think one of the reasons is because it is helmed entirely by Blizzard. It's produced alongside MLG, for example, but it's not their league. And so I think you're probably going to see more of these kind of big esports pushes from companies who are pushing their own games. And Ubisoft make a lot of sense for pushing these kind of leagues initially. Blizzard and Ubisoft make a lot of sense for it. So then from that, we got the announcement of a documentary called Another Mindset, which follows some pro players through the Rainbow Six Siege scene. Sorry about the yawns. Okay, next up we had a gentleman ride a bike on stage and then fall into a PC, which was odd. It was all obviously very scripted, and it was to announce a new Trials game, Trials Rising, which looks like a hardcore Trials game. It looks like it's going back to the core motocross competitive multiplayer Trials games, and I'm so excited for it. The last Trials game that I played was Trials of the Blood Dragon, and it made me want to cut my knackers off. It was just awful, terrible, but at the core of it was Trials, and Trials is so addictive, so brilliantly made, and so mechanically tight. And if they're going back to that and putting it properly from the next gen ground up, or from the current gen ground up, I guess, that's very exciting. Also exciting is that it's launching day and date with the Nintendo Switch copy version even. That's really awesome. Ubisoft are fucking big on the Nintendo Switch support at the minute, and Trials is the kind of game that you could play on the go, although I'd probably end up doing damages to buses and trains if I were to play it on the go. It can get a bit infuriating, but it makes a lot of sense for that platform. And it's coming out in February next year with an open beta later this year. Awesome. Next, we got The Division 2. This had an incredible trailer, an incredibly beautiful, incredibly dark cinematic trailer, very, very much like the cinematic trailer that launched The Division 1 and was well known for being, the trailer of E3. I think Beyond Good and Evil will take that this year. Sorry, I'm going to make yawn noises now, so I'm not just being silent, but yeah, I yawn a lot when I do this for some reason. Yeah, it was a very, very good trailer, very dark. Although my only problem with it was that we know the graphics and the fidelity of the game doesn't look that good. Now, I know it's a concept trailer. I know it's more of a tone piece. But to me, it seems a bit odd to demo the game on Xbox's stage, show what it actually looks like, and then have this trailer that looks quite disjointed from the actual look and feel of the game. It almost reminded me of Dead Island, where it had that incredibly just striking tone and striking visuals, and then you kind of realize, oh, but there's a video game in this. And I'm watching The Division 2 as I'm recording this, and it looks great. It looks like a good game. Again, I played The Division before. It didn't really do anything for me. So if you're a Division fan, this is a Super Division game. You know what you're getting into here. But that being said, it looks really good. The trailer was absolutely awesome, and I like that that's the tone they're shooting for. Would just like to see a little bit more realistic a tone in those CG trailers. They also announced that there is a year-long free content plan, so all of their updates and all of their upgrades and patches and so on and so forth that add new content will be free. That's pretty expected at this point for this kind of game. We know the... in fact, to be honest, we know that this is trying to go for the Destiny audience, but Destiny's the only one that still does paid upgrades, so probably expect to see that change. But yeah, the Division getting free content for the rest of its life, supposedly, and that raids are coming to the Division, which is a big thing because raids are kind of pretty standard in this kind of structure, I suppose. All right, next up we got an announcement of DLC for Mario Cross Rabbids Kingdom Battle, and it features Donkey Kong, which is awesome. This was not the only Nintendo announcement we got at Ubisoft, and man, those companies are deeply in bed with each other. They are showing love for each other's work, and good on them, man. This was a cool reveal. It's really nice to see that Mario and Rabbids is doing well enough to continue getting support. I kind of hope we see a sequel to it. It looked like the most original Mario thing we'd seen in years, and I love that Ubisoft are kind of taking on themselves to do original things with those content, with those franchises. Sorry. It looks awesome. Next up, we got Skull and Bones, or as I like to call it, Assassin's Creed of Thieves, because that's very much what it is. It's very clearly going for a similar situation in which you have the ultimate pirate crew with your friends, and there are factions, and there are people you can sell things to, and there are quests. But yeah, we saw gameplay for it. It looked basically the same as it did the last time we saw it, just with a new UI and a couple new visual upgrades. It's so unbelievably clear that this started life as an Assassin's Creed game and they changed it, and I kind of want to know what that Assassin's Creed game was more than Skull and Bones. I don't know that this is going to sell well, although I would say that the demo we saw this year will sell better than the demo we saw last year, if that makes sense. If you just show me last year and put the game out, I would have gone, I would pin that to flop. This year I won't pin it to flop, but I still don't really know what the point of the game is. It seems a little bit, Sea of Thievesy, mismatched, I suppose. Next up, we got Frodo on the stage. We had Elijah Wood take the stage to talk about Transference VR, which is the game that he's been involved with since it was announced last year. The trailer was, Ubisoft just deserve huge props for their trailer game this year. The trailer for this game looked super PTE. It looked very, very... what's the word I'm looking for? It had a very, very claustrophobic feel. There were hallways like you saw in PT, shifting realities like you saw in PT. There was a very kind of what can you trust, what can't you trust, air even to it. The trailer was fantastic, and it looked super unpleasant, super creepy. If I were into VR horror, by which I mean if I wasn't a pussy and willing to do VR horror, this is absolutely the kind of VR horror I'd want to play. Then we got Starlink. Now, if you told me before this conference one of the most exciting things will be Starlink, I would say to you, go and fuck yourself. But man, they pulled it out of the hat with this. Starlink, they showed off a trailer. They showed off quite a long extended trailer about the game, and it looks a lot more fully fledged than it did last year. It has a really nice kind of children's CG TV show art style. I know that's kind of hard to explain, but if you watch something like Thunderbirds on CITV, for example, shout out to Mark Silk, who's a friend of the show, is in that show. It hugely reminded me of this. It kind of looks a bit like a grown-up No Man's Sky, kind of hard to nail down, but it looks a lot more fully fledged, and it definitely looks like a full story this time. It definitely looks like a meaty game. See, one of the problems with Toys to Life games is often they are a little bit sort of sporadic because you have to put the Toys to Life in there. You have to make as many characters and as many stages so you can sell as many toys so that they then become the money-making part of the game, and the game itself is kind of supplementary. But as a result, you get something like Skylanders, which is a fully formed game, but it's very hard to sort of define the look and feel of it, whereas Starlink has a very defined look and feel, and I think that's going to do good things for it. I'm still not entirely sold on the build your own spaceship Hot Wheels thing, kind of, but actually it looked a lot better than it looked the year before. It looked like a game I could play. I don't know that I'm either the target audience or somebody who's going to pick it up, but it looked like a game that if you sat me in front of and put a gun to my head, I could happily play through. And then they announced that there's some exclusive content coming to it. Star Fox. Now, this, firstly, I thought, oh my god, this is a Star Fox game. Oh my god, this is brilliant. This is Ubisoft making, and it's not quite. But I imagine it wouldn't be hard to play it like a Star Fox game, or play it as though it were a Star Fox game. Unfortunately, Star Fox is only on the Switch version of the game, which is to be expected, I guess, although it would have been nice to have Star Fox on all the platforms for this game. That would have been really lovely. And then Miyamoto was in the audience again, which is lovely. He brightens up any room that he's in. And also, it's really nice to see Ubisoft again tipping the hat to Nintendo, especially with how much they've helped them propel themselves to success last year. Last year was great for Ubisoft with Mario and Rabbids and Assassin's Creed, and then Far Cry earlier this year. They've had a great, great financial year and successful year, and it really started with Kingdom Battle. So it's lovely that they keep tipping the hat to Nintendo. They also keep giving him gifts because he received the first version of Star Fox's ship, which was made and can be used in the game. So this was really cool. This was a really dope reveal. I got very excited for a minute, and I really hope we see more Ubisoft cross Nintendo stuff in the future. They are nailing it with doing right by those franchises, and that's so cool because for a long time Nintendo has struggled with nailing down and pushing its franchises into the future. And when they said that they were going to start working with third-party people, we were like, ugh, do we start to see the sort of dilution of what Nintendo is? And no, they've just managed to find the perfect partnership with Ubisoft to do right by these franchises. That's exactly what we needed them to do. Props to everyone involved with that. Then we got the Crew 2. Oh no, sorry, then we didn't. Then we got For Honor. For Honor detailed a new update that's coming out later this year with a new mode and some new characters in, and then they explained that the For Honor PC Starter Edition is free for the next week. So if you want to play For Honor, or you just want to get a free game and have you play, go onto it, get For Honor for free, and it's yours. Awesome. Thanks, Ubisoft. I won't personally pick it up because I don't have Uplay on my PC, but if I did, this would be awesome. I'd be there in a second. The next we got was The Crew 2. They had a cool game. They had a cool trailer for it. The game is out in 18 days, so we didn't see a huge amount of it. We did see some gameplay in the trailer. We did see some minimal deep dive stuff, but then they announced that there'll be an open beta in 10 days. It's not a beta, let's be honest. This is not testing in any way. This is a demo for the game. You'll get to try the game before it comes out, but they're still doing that. So kind of props to them for it. Would like them to call it a demo, but yeah, it's just a naming thing at the end of the day. You can preload the beta now, and then the beta comes out on the 21st, and then the game comes out on the 29th. Then we got a deep dive into Assassin's Creed Odyssey. The game comes out at the end of the year, and it's very, very much the Brotherhood to Assassin's Creed Origins, Assassin's Creed 2. That was a weird sentence, wasn't it? Basically, it looks like Assassin's Creed Origins 0.5. It's very clearly based on that engine, very clearly based on that structure, and very clearly building off what Origins did right. A lot of the core mechanics seem very similar. The combat seems kind of similar with a couple of upgrades. The RPG system seems kind of similar with a couple of upgrades. The exploration, kind of similar with a couple of upgrades. It's much like you expect from Assassin's Creed, where Origins was a massive reboot of the franchise. This is building on what Origins did right. However, there's a couple of things that really struck me about this. Firstly, you can choose to play as a female assassin. Fantastic. It's been a long time coming. I kind of wish they'd just have a committed to female assassin, but actually giving people choice is probably the right way to go through it, especially as they make this more and more RPG-ish. So yeah, that's good, and I'll be playing as Cassandra when I pick up Odyssey, and I probably will pick up Odyssey day and date because I'm quite excited about it. The second thing that's interesting about this game is it's not going forwards in time. Assassin's Creed has been known to start as far back as it will go and then move forwards to the present. This isn't. It's going backwards by about 400 years. The reason this is really interesting is because the first civilization, who were a big part of the lore of Assassin's Creed, played quite a heavy role in Origins in terms of the wider story and a couple of the specific gameplay instances. Maybe we're going back? Maybe rather than going forwards to the future, i.e. what we did with Desmond, we're going back to where Assassin's Creed started. Now, that's pure conjecture, and I kind of doubt that that's what we're doing, but it's kind of exciting that we might be. The other thing that I got from this trailer and this kind of deep dive into the gameplay was that the visuals are far more striking than they've ever been. Now, the visuals in Origins were striking because they felt like a very, very fully realised version of Egypt in an Assassin's Creed game, but this time around it feels like there's been real detail paid, real attention paid to making sure that Greece feels like the kind of mythical place that we know it as today. See, we know it a lot through sort of stories and myths and legends, and it feels like what the Assassin's Creed Odyssey devs are doing is trying to take those myths and legends and translate them into a kind of real-world version of them. You see the Minotaur a couple of times in the trailer, but you also see a great deal of statues and artwork and instances that are clearly affected by Greek myths and legends, and the kind of thing that we tell as philosophical... damn it, I'm really mixing my words up here. The kind of things that we know now as stories that were told in those ages. I like the idea that we're going to play as a character in a real grounded world who tells a real grounded story that's learning and interacting with the stories that we know as kind of built-up mythical, mystical legends now. That's a really nice idea to approach this world with. It looks, as I say, much the same as Origins, and I am a little disappointed that we won't be seeing Aya, or at least we won't be playing as Aya. I kind of love that character from Origins. I almost loved her a little more than I did Bayek. But if we're going to be playing as anyone, but if we... I'm mixing my words up, sorry. But if we do have to not play as Aya, going back in time is a good reason to do so, especially as it will allow us to explore a lot more of a rich part of Greek history. And I kind of like the idea maybe we establish Aya's bloodline, maybe we travel to Egypt and interact with Siwa before Bayek was ever there. Maybe we learn more about the assassins and the first civilization before Bayek even interacts with them. Any of that kind of stuff could be very exciting about this game. And actually, I'm really, really excited for it. I haven't been excited for an Assassin's Creed in a while, especially after we played the demo of Origins last year, and I'm excited again. I'm very proud of that. So, that was nearly the end of the conference. Then we had Yves Guillemot take the stage with all the devs from the evening, and they filled the stage. And I must say, it was a lovely moment to have a stage full of nearly... I mean, it looked packed, almost like hundreds, but I don't know, I didn't count. But it looked like it was hundreds of devs on stage at the same time, clearly so proud of the work that they've done. And behind them, the brass band that introduced Just Dance, or whoever that was making the music for the Just Dance brass band, played I'm Still Standing. A nice little nod, I think, to the non-takeover that happened. Ubisoft is still standing. They are still Ubisoft as we know them. They're not being taken over. And man, this E3 conference was them staking their flag in the ground and saying, hey, you tried to kill us. We're here stronger than we've ever been. And they really are. Their trailer game was on point. Their announcement game was mostly on point. And every one of the games they showed here either looked solid or kind of has me very, very ready to play it. That's something damn special. I do wish we got a one more thing, though. This was the first conference in years in which Ubisoft didn't go, and here's something extra. And we all know what we wanted it to be. We wanted it to be Splinter Cell. There's been so much talk of Splinter Cell, and it feels this E3 like a lot of the things there's been talk for haven't happened, i.e. Rocksteady on the Microsoft stage, i.e. Splinter Cell on this stage, i.e. Avengers and Final Fantasy and Square Enix. And I really wish that Ubisoft had just gone, wink to the camera, and here's some green lights. But they didn't, unfortunately. I do like that the last thing of this conference was I'm Still Standing. I do like that the last thing of this conference was Ubisoft staking their flag into the ground and showing how strong a company they are. But nothing excites me quite like a final trailer, and we just didn't get one this time around. That being said, it's matched the bar set by Xbox, a damned strong conference, a very, very exciting conference, and easily my trailer of the show so far. That, ladies and gentlemen, was our reactions to Ubisoft. Thank you so much for listening. It means the world, and we are going to be reacting to every conference that still has to happen at E3, except the PC gaming show, because that's happening in literally minutes. And I'm afraid we just don't quite have the time. And we never really expect huge announcements from the PC gaming show. So if they do make a huge announcement and we don't cover it, then that's egg on our face. But we're gonna sort of hold ourselves ready for Sony in a few hours. Thank you very much for listening. Again, it means the world, and you can catch all of our E3 content by subscribing to the channel so you don't miss anything that we put out. You can find us on all the social and content channels, whether that be iTunes, YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter. We're at Games Upcast on every one of them, and we will see you in a few hours for Sony. Man, I'm excited for the last few shows of E3. Thanks very much, and until then, the game is up.